I'm Dana Russell with Kokopelli Real Estate and Property Management, and this is the Kokopelli Connection, where we discuss the history, happenings, and lifestyle of Western Colorado. Morgan Murri joins us on this episode of the Kokopelli Connection. Morgan is a local endurance athlete, an adventure seeker, and the founder of the Desert Gravel Race Series. Morgan talks about the importance of mental resolve in endurance sports and how he ran the Leadville 100 after breaking his foot just 1 month prior. We also discussed gravel riding in the Grand Valley and what Morgan did to develop the very popular Ko-To-It gravel race that is occurring this year on May 3rd, 2025 in Fruita, Colorado. Let's get into it. All right, Morgan. Well, thank you for being on this episode with us. We are very excited to talk to you today about mountain biking, racing, and the Desert Gravel Series that you put on.
Great.
Tell us about your background. Tell us about you and then your background of riding mountain bikes.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I've been kind of circling the Grand Valley since I was a kid. I grew up at Lake Powell. In Bullfrog, which very few people can say.
Yes.
And as a kid, we would come to Grand Junction once a month to grocery shop. So I've been coming here since the late 70s. And after college, I went to Vail to be a ski bum for a season and stayed there for almost 20 years. And my background is actually in very high-end fine jewelry.
Oh, really?
So I built my career in the jewelry business, and I had property here for many years, thinking that someday I would retire here. So I'd come from Vail, first to Moab often, as we all did in the 80s, to ride mountain bikes. And then when Fruita started happening, coming to Fruita, and just always loved the valley and always wanted to find an opportunity to come back here. So we moved here 5 years ago, and almost 6 years ago now, and love living in the Grand Valley. We feel like it's our people, and it's such a perfect jumping off place for the rest of the world, whether you're a skier or a biker or, a canyoneer or whitewater rafter or whatever it is. Yep. So really, really love being here. I've made it our home and have a 6-year-old daughter and about to have a new daughter in a few months, and just loving our time here.
Do you guys still go back to Powell frequently?
I don't. No. It makes me very sad to see what's happened to the lake. And, being there in the late 70s and early 80s when it was kind of the most happening, most beautiful in its history, and seeing today with the low water and the mussels and, the lack of resources and things, it makes me sad to go. So I kind of avoid it, which is too bad because it's still a spectacular place.
Yeah.
And the few times I do go, when I get on the water, I'm just like, but you go, you go in and see where I lived and things like that. And it went from this really cool community to this really dilapidated spot. So it's tough for me to go there.
Yeah.
So I kind of envisioned that this is a lot like the lake without the water.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. So tell us about mountain biking. How did you get into biking? And
yeah, thanks. I've been a pretty high level adult athlete. I was a horrible kid athlete, but I came into my own late. I actually moved to Vail to ski on the Pro Mogul Tour. So I was a professional skier for a few years. And I was in Vail right as the mountain bike scene started to happen, and really got into mountain biking and really enjoyed it. And I was a motorcycle racer as a kid my whole life, so those skills translated well to a certain part of mountain biking. And I loved doing it and loved challenging myself. So that athletic journey, in addition to my jewelry journey, really took me on a kind of a path that's led me to where I am in my life. And I spent many years racing really, really intensely. And I did the first Leadville 100 mountain bike race, the first year they had it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, when it was this crazy. And at that time, there were no races like that happening in the world. And we were just, this was in the days of Norva and short races and high intensity. And none of us could envision what it would be like to ride your bike for 100 miles at 10, 11, 12,000 feet, even living in Vail. And I was fortunate because I lived in Vail and it was an hour to Leadville. So it was easy for me to go and train there and ride there and just try and wrap my head around what it was going to take to ride my bike for instead of 2 hours for however long it would be. And frankly, I was scared to death of doing it because there was just no history. There was no data. There was no information. And I was there in late July and starting to come to grips with the fact that I thought that I would be able to do it. And that's when all the runners started showing up there to train for the 100-mile running event that had been going on for 10 or 15 years longer than the bike ride. And it gives me goosebumps today to think about it. I mean, this was in 1994. And I started talking to these guys that were there running. And they're talking 20, 25, 30 hours of running the same thing that we were thinking of riding in 8 or 9 or 10 hours or something. And it really shifted my perspective of that it was possible. Mm-hmm. And later that summer, I said, and I was a horrible runner as a kid, hated running, never good at it. I ran in high school and was terrible at it. But I said, I will run this one day. I'm gonna do that. And I just kind of put that in my bank. And so I did the race that year, the very first year, which was cool. There were 284 people, I think. Now it's 2,500.
Yes, it's a huge event now.
Yeah, huge. You can't get in without a lottery and all that stuff. So that was a really, really epic thing. So that shifted my kind of mindset from what I would call short track racing to long ultra endurance stuff. So I went on that journey for many, many years, and I don't remember what year it was, but I finally said I'm going to run. I did the bike race 4 or 5 times and decided that I was going to do the run. So I transitioned and started running. And ironically, and it's a story I think of every time I ride the monument. I came here in November one year to run the monument run, which is now the Rimrock Marathon.
Yep.
And at that point, it was just the gate-to-gate run, so it was 20 some odd miles. And that was going to be the longest run that I ever did. And I was up at a spot, kind of as you go up past Cold Shivers and through the tunnels and things, and started talking with this runner that I was talking with, and I'll make a very long story short, but she asked me what I was training for and yada, yada, yada. And I said on this spot that I remember every time I ride my bike there, I'm training to run the Leadville 100. She was like, oh, wow, that's incredible. That's 100 miles and blah, blah, blah. And she said, well, when are you going to do it? And I said, I'm going to do it next year. And she said, wow, so this is just a training run for you. And I said, well, kind of. And she said, well, what 50 milers, what 100 miles have you done? I said, I haven't done any. And she said, well, what 50 milers have you done? And I said, I haven't done any. And she said, well, what marathons have you done? And I was like, I haven't done any. And she said, well, what is this? And I said, well, this will be the longest run I've ever done. Mm-hmm. And I could tell by the way that we were talking and the way that the conversation was going that she just thought I was, being a smart ass or whatever it was. But I went on and I ran the Leadville 100 that next summer. And so I did that for many years, and that led to a lot of different things. And so I've just been kind of an adventurous athlete looking for ways to test myself against cycling or running or, endurance sports mm-hmm. for all of my adult life. And I love it.
It's very interesting how the Leadville 100 was kind of a unique and groundbreaking race when it first came out. What year was that?
1994 was the bike race, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because we have read, what is that book called that we've...
Born to Run?
No, it's a cyclist book. I can't remember.
Lost Cyclist?
The what?
The Lost Cyclist?
The Lost Cyclist.
Don't know that book.
And it's about this guy who... He tries to ride around the world, but doesn't make it. But it was groundbreaking in the day because they were riding safety bicycles instead of the bone shakers. And he would ride from, he would do these long distance rides, 50-mile rides or whatever, in their wool clothes and their wool socks. And they had, they created these things to go around their necks so they could hold snacks in them. Oh, wow. Because they didn't have, I mean, you think of just how cycling has evolved, and to think that in 94, you said, that the Leadville 100 was kind of the same thing, just this huge race that no one's really ever thought of. But that's a good book. You should check it out.
Yeah, we'll do that for sure. I will do that for sure.
So you went from cycling running and cycling. Tell us about your running a little bit more.
Well, I ran.
How did the Leadville 100 go for you?
It's a 2-hour podcast story. 27 days. I built literally the minute that came out of my mouth on the monument, I was like, holy crap, I got to like focus on this. And I'm really good at that of setting my intention and then figuring out, then backing it up to what I have to do to focus on. I coach athletes now, and that's the methodology that I use.
I was going to say, yeah.
So I arranged a job change. I did a career change. It's when I kind of stepped away from the jewelry business in Vail to do something different. And I timed it all so I could take the summer off and transition between jobs from my job to a new job. So I was like, I'm going to take the whole summer off and get serious. And I did that race and then did some marathons through the winter and then did some 50 milers in the spring. And it was actually going really, really well. And I had the summer off. So I was going to from my home in Vail to Leadville a lot to train and get familiar with the course as the snow melted and things. And about a month out from the race, I went to see my brother who lives in Montana. And we both grew up motorcycle racing. And he had these little really souped up 50cc kids bikes that he had built a motocross track in his yard. And growing up as a kid, I was always faster than him and he always wanted to beat me. And he was like, let's go race. And I was like, I can't do that. I'm ready for this race. And I was running up there and just really unwinding, 4 weeks out from my race. And the last night I was there, he finally talked me into racing him, and I broke my ankle.
Oh, no.
And kind of like you were saying with your shoulder, I just, look at the goosebumps yet. I laid on the ground and just had a meltdown.
Yeah.
And I called my wife and she answered the phone and I just started bawling. It was just like, I broke my ankle, and I put so much into that race.
Yeah.
And I had to drive home. I had a stick shift truck, and I had to drive home with my foot up on the dash because it was so swollen, and trying to use my clutch and then switch over to the gas. I don't know how I drove from Bozeman back to Vail, but I did it. And thankfully, because of my connections in the Vail Valley, I had an incredible connection with the guys at Steadman Hawkins. Dr. Hawkins was a customer of mine. And so I went to see those guys. It was called an avulsion fracture. So that's when your tendon pulls your bone off. So your bone stays attached to your tendon but pulls off. Mm-hmm. So I went to see Dr. Hawkins and then David Honda, who was a really renowned physical therapist. I went to see him, and they basically said, this just takes time to heal back together. We wrap it and do all this stuff, but there's no structural stuff. It's just basically on the x-ray, you can see the cap of my ankle bone attached to my tendon just kind of floating. So I was like, so I can still run, right? And we're like, yeah, not really, but you won't hurt yourself.
That was Ben's first question in the ER. When can I ride again?
Yeah, right? I mean, that's just our mindset, right? Of the people that do these types of things. But they after a week or so, they basically said, well, you won't damage yourself. I was like, well, what if I just try? I couldn't even walk. I mean, I literally couldn't put any weight on it or anything. It was 27 days before the race. And I just was like, I'm going to try and make this happen. And so I went to David Honda, and we were doing all this therapy, and I was going to physical therapy, and thank God I didn't have a job, right? It's just, so I would go to the rec center in Avon and just run in the pool like for 4 or 5 hours. I mean, until I would have to start wearing a wetsuit. I'd just be freezing. They'd be telling me I got to get out of the pool, and I'm like, no, I got 1 more hour. And I'd go into the sauna to heat train, but little by little it got a little better, and I could walk with a boot, and then I could get out of the boot, and then they would do some more therapy, and I was doing all this crazy stuff with all these really leading medical people, and it was coming around. The swelling was going way down. And so they finally, 2 weeks out, said, well, you can, look, if you want to be stupid and go and try and run this thing, you can just see how far you can go, maybe get to the first aid station, which is 13 miles. And it just kept getting better and better and better, and I was really pushing it. And the week before the 100-mile run is a 10K race. Okay. That they do. And so I set the goal, like, I want to go and see, and it's the first and last 3 miles of the race. So you go out 3 miles and turn around and come back, and they call it the Boulevard. It's a really infamous part of the 100-mile race because it's when you kind of know you're there, and you come up over this hill, and you can see the finish line, and everybody's cheering, and everybody's crying. And so I was like, I'm going to just see if I can get to the point where I can do that 10K. That's going to be my first time running. And I had two older kids, and they were 13 and 11 at the time. And I talked them into running it with me so they could keep up because I was basically, in a boot cast and stuff. And I made it. And I was like, I can do the 100. I'm going to do it. And everybody was just like, oh my gosh. And my parents, who are just incredible supporters of mine, were like, we'll be here to see what happens. And it took me, the cutoff for that race is 30 hours. And I did it in 29 hours and 40 minutes or something.
Wow.
And made it. And it was a long time ago. But it was a very transformative moment in my life.
Yeah.
That was my first time running it. I've run it several other times, but that kind of set me on a journey to find out what my limits were. Mm-hmm. And so that's really what I spent my later adult life chasing. Mm-hmm. I've done almost every ridiculous race in the world that I've done, running across Death Valley in July and racing across the Sahara Desert. And so if you fast forward through all of that, 6 or 7 years ago, I heard about this really crazy gravel bike race. Mm-hmm. And, gravel was just starting to happen. And there's this race in Kansas. It was that time called the Dirty Kanza. It's now called Unbound Gravel. And it was a 200-mile race and this epic, crazy thing. And people would come to me and say, oh, you got to do this crazy race. And it was kind of the thing race. And I don't like doing the thing races. I like kind of doing the stuff before they're the thing, like Leadville, and that stuff. And it just never really triggered my interest. But I started gravel riding. I was living in Denver at the time. I'd move.
Before you go on, explain what is gravel riding.
Yeah, great question. So gravel riding is this beautiful version, I would call it, of a road bike. You basically have a road bike that has wider, now they're actually as wide almost as mountain bike tires, with more relaxed geometry, so you're more comfortable. The bikes are a little more flexible. But the bikes allow you to go take a road bike kind of setup, no suspension typically, and go on a dirt road versus a paved road. Mm-hmm. So I think the big movement in gravel has been, people ask me this all the time now that I direct gravel races, what's the interest? And what I believe the interest is that mountain biking has gotten quite extreme for a lot of people with the advancements of suspension and abilities and the technical nature of trails and things, that it's a much higher risk sport than it was when I was racing. And at the same time, road riding is a very, very high risk sport, right? I mean, it's not a day goes by that it's not posted somewhere that somebody got hit by a car, almost hit by a car. So I believe the real transition to gravel has been people that have a road riding background that are afraid of riding on the road. I mean, I'm pretty afraid to ride on the road anymore. I get older, I've got kids and more conservative, and I don't want to get hit by a car. Yeah. And mountain bikers, if you've been mountain biking for a long time, you can't afford a new bike or you're intimidated by these trails, that's not really the best spot for you either. So gravel has become this niche for people that love to ride bikes, that want to go out and do something that can be, scary or a little bit extreme, but that extremity is kind of controlled by how fast you want to push it. Gotcha. Not by the terrain or not by a car. And so gravel riding is kind of taking a road bike and adapting it to go on a dirt road. So you get to go down these country dirt roads with very little traffic and really scenic and that's why it kind of took off in the middle of the country, because there wasn't a lot there for cyclists to do, and there's all this agricultural stuff and all these dirt roads. And so the big original gravel races started in the middle of the country. Oh. In farmland. And Kansas became the epicenter for that with the Dirty Kanza, which is now Unbound. And so 6 years ago, Unbound launched this. And 200 miles is pretty hard. I mean, it's a long way to ride a bike.
It's a long way to drive a car.
It's a long way to drive a car. Yeah. It's a very long way to run. Yes. But they announced this 350-mile. They call it the XL, DKXL, a 350-mile race with zero support, completely unsupported, had to do it on your own, no aid stations, no help, no people, carry what you want, stop at gas stations, and ride 350 miles. And I was like, that sounds cool. And it was an application process. You had to be invited to get in, which is how the Death Valley run works. So I like that, where they have to kind of figure out if you're qualified to do that. And I did that one year when Moab had the 24-hour and nobody was doing it solo, and I petitioned the race director to let me do it solo because they were like, oh, nobody's ever done that before. So I like doing stuff like that. So I applied, and I wasn't in great shape at that point. I'd kind of not been riding, and we just had a baby, and I got accepted, and it got me really stoked about gravel riding. And it was very, very interesting to go to the Midwest, coming here from Mecca, road cycling, mountain biking. I was like, what is this, like riding a bike across, isn't Kansas that flat place with all the tornadoes, right? The cornfields. Oh my God. It was so hard. It was daunting, and I love finding these events and then having to figure it out. Like how much water, how do you carry your water?
Right.
Like, where do I get water next? And there was a section in that race where it was more than 100 miles between where we were and any gas station, anything. So it was like legit. And it was going to be through the night. It was a phase of the race where you're going to be doing it in the dark. So it was like, how do I carry enough water to ride 100 miles at night and make it to this next aid station? So the logistical part of that was really, really, really cool for me.
Did you have to siphon from any cow troughs?
I didn't. But I did poach some water from a church. That was okay because they left the door open. And it was just this really cool, and it was hard as hell. The hills are just like crazy, which ties in very directly to what I'm doing here in Fruita with my races. It's this flat terrain, but you get out there and there's just, it was 350 miles, and I did 18,000 feet of climbing.
Oh, wow.
In like Kansas.
In flatland, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just like, I was looking at my car and I was just dying. I was like, there's no way there's this much, and it just kept, and it's just these steep climbs and down, and every time you looked up, it was another hill. And so it was this really, really cool event. They're wonderful people. I understand why it's such a prestigious race. And, but that made me want to do just like I wanted. So we don't have time to talk about today, but I've started to coach athletes. And the reason I've done that, and I do some motivational speaking and things like that, but the reason I do that is to share what I've experienced by those moments, breaking my ankle or finishing Leadville or running the monument, to share that with people.
Well, before we get into the desert gravel series that you do here, I am very interested to know what, a lot of the times in sports, especially, even for my run at 5:30 in the morning, a lot of it's mental.
Oh, yeah.
And just, being able to get up every morning and continuously do it. But my 5 miles is nothing compared to what you were doing for training. So what are some things that you do mentally to keep yourself motivated, or that you just do in general for those kind of trainings?
Well, it's a great question. And I think the reason it's a great question is because it gives me an opportunity to share, to expand on exactly what you're saying, that to all the athletes I coach, I say the same thing. Once you achieve a certain level of fitness, and you have to achieve a certain level of fitness to do, whether it's a 5K, a marathon, or ride 200 miles, getting that level of fitness to do it isn't incredibly hard. It's harder depending on what the objective is. Finishing is really hard, but finishing is so much more mental than it is physical.
Yeah, I would agree.
Right? Leadville has a 43% finish rate. Almost 60% of the people every year fail to do it. And I just got so into that. Right? Like, why? So Death Valley, the race across Badwater, the race across Death Valley, they invite about 80 people and they have about a 90% finish rate. Like, okay, so how can you run 135 miles across Death Valley when it's 120 degrees outside and everybody finishes? Yeah. And you go to Leadville and it's 100, but it's only 100 miles, and you have it's cool, and 60% of the people drop out. And it is absolutely 100% mental. And so the first thing that I instill in anybody that I'm training is, let's talk about where you are mentally. Like, does what you want to do line up with where you are in your head? And my coaching company is called Amaze Yourself, because that's what I want people to do. And I say, and I spell it out as not yourself, but yourself, your inner person who you are. Amaze that. Mm-hmm. And to do that means you have to mentally prepare for some really, really tough moments in training, in relationships, in accidents, right? And then on the day of the event, when it all comes together and the crap really hits the fan, right? So I think it's really finding for each person what their motivation is. I can't train myself well without an end goal. Mm-hmm. And my end goal is always to do it, not to beat somebody, not to win it, but to say I did that at my maximum ability on that day. For other people, it's different. I want to be on the podium, or I want to do this, or I want to qualify for this. And whatever those things are, that's what I tell people. That's your journey. This is your deal. I'm here to help you with your deal, but let's figure out what your deal is. Mm-hmm. And then once you make that deal with yourself, then you have to honor it with eating the right food and getting the right sleep and you know what I say, because I coach only recreational athletes, some of them high level, some of them not, is that life happens, right? You have a responsibility to banning your children, and I have a responsibility to my family and my job. But after that, you have to carve out this time where you say, now I'm going to invest everything I can in being exceptional and do the best I can with this. Yeah. And that's very hard. I coach a lot of athletes, and I find that quality is lacking in most people. Everybody wants to say it, and I say this a lot, and I wish I didn't say it so much, but everybody wants to say they did the amazing thing. Mm-hmm. Not a lot of people want to do what it takes to do it. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Because you get into it, and you're like, well, it's hard to sell a home. Right? It's hard to run a business. It's hard to raise a family. And to be really good at that, it's a lot of, it takes a lot of sacrifice.
Yeah, so, it does. Yeah. Yeah. That's, I appreciate that outtake. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So tell us about Desert Gravel.
So I come back from Unbound, from Dirty Content. I'm just like, I got to do it. I got to do a race here. And so I spent my whole life, from the time I was a 12-year-old kid in Bullfrog coming to Grand Junction, all the way up to when I was a 50-whatever-year-old man going to Moab, whatever. And all of us, everybody here, probably everybody that will listen to this podcast, drives I-70 and goes, and you see this desert out between Fruita and Crescent Junction or Green River, however far you want to go, of just this boring, flat, gray, ugly wasteland. And it took me a few months. I started playing with Kokopelli Trail, and is there an easier way? And how can I get gravel here in the valley and do something that's cool? And I love the desert. I mean, growing up at Lake Powell, I'm a total desert rat. I just love sharing the desert with people. So I was like, I want to share this. I want to share this idea I have about pushing yourself. And I want to showcase this place where we live. And every place I went, it was too hard. It was like, you can't ride a gravel bike here. And I started just randomly. I don't even know why. But I was like, what is out there? Like, what is north of I-70? What is all that ugly stuff? And Quinn was just a few months old, and I would put her in her car seat, and I would get in our car, and I would go, and I would just start getting off exits on I-70, and I started finding these roads. And I was like, holy crap. Well, the challenge was that every exit on I-70 has a road that goes out to the oil and gas fields, but they all go north into the Book Cliffs, and then they end. Some go all the way through, but they don't, there's nothing that, goes back and forth. So once I kind of did all these exits, I started to look at what was between them. And I have these great videos that I did of just logging myself of, oh my gosh, and I would call Lindsay, oh my God, I don't know where I am, but I found this crazy road and it goes east or west. And I would
She's probably like, well, can you get home?
Well, yeah, I got my kid in the back of the car, and I went to some really stupid places, all the stories I could tell. But I would take my Garmin and I would just record it. Because I couldn't tell where I was, especially when I came out somewhere. But I started downloading the routes, and then I could see on my maps, oh, this is here, and then I'd be like, oh, this almost touches, and it literally took me an entire year
that long
of exploring and exploring and exploring. And I don't know how many people that listen to this know what Strava is, but Strava is this really, really cool app that if you use it every time you go for a ride, it tracks where you rode. and it logs that, and it tracks how fast you or ran it. And then you as the athlete can create a segment and say, I want to make a segment called Morgan ran hard up to Cold Shivers Point. And every time anybody does that, it compares them to how you did, so you can rank yourself. And this happens all over the world. Well, you can look at Strava. It's fascinating if anybody doesn't know about this but wants to. If you look at Strava, it has heat maps. So you can look basically a satellite view of where riding is in the world and see these hot spots. So I opened up Strava and back up for a second. As I was putting this together, all of a sudden it hit me. I was like, oh my gosh, I want to do a gravel race from Fruita to Moab. Really long through the desert. So that's when I started to realize it could happen. I was like, I want to make a really hardcore long gravel race that connects these two incredible cycling cities. So as I got deeper into it, I finally pulled up Strava, the heat map, and there's this incredible, if you can imagine, there's this glowing heat in Moab. There's this glowing heat in Fruita. There's this glowing heat on the Front Range. There's this glowing heat in the Wasatch Front. And then there's little trails all over. Well, you zoom in, and this is God's honest truth. I have it in a PowerPoint presentation. There's this elbow of blackness from Fruita to Moab. There was not a single Strava segment in 200 miles.
There you go.
I was like, nobody has been out there. Well, you should see that heat map today. It is unbelievable what we've created out with connecting that corridor. And so as I started to put it together, I started to link those routes together, and I was like, this can be this and this can, so, and I built five different kind of cycling distances. I wanted to do something that was, when Dirty Kanza Unbound started, it was 200 miles. That was it. Either had to be badass or couldn't go. And they've since lowered the bar and have other ways to get in and had more people. And I wanted that. I wanted more people. I didn't want you to have to be this hardcore athlete to come out here and see what we were doing. And a friend of mine out of the blue gave me this great idea. He's like, why don't you name the rides after dinosaurs? And so I looked into all the different dinosaurs that were here, and I picked a name for, there's this little dinosaur that was only found in Fruita, and they call it Fruita-Dens. So that's my shortest course. It's 30 miles, called the Fruita-Dens. So we have a Fruita-Dens, a Stegosaurus, a Utah Raptor, which is this crazy monster bird. And so we created this whole dino theme, which ties right into Fruita and our community for these race courses. And the riding is spectacular. And what I'm most most proud of is to see the heat map and what we've done to allow people to do that. But that's just an expression of how many people that I've turned on to how incredible it is out there. I mean, we live in such a beautiful place. And when you're driving down I-70, you look out there, it looks just like, you wonder how the antelope even survive, right?
Yeah.
What are they eating? What are they drinking? But when you go out there and ride, kind of like I did at Unbound, it's this, I mean, you can go out and ride and get 6,000 or 7,000 feet of vert, and you never climb for more than a half a mile. Yeah. It's just up and down. And so I was saying to Ben when I came in, I spent an unbelievable amount of time of trying to always make it better, find new sections, work around bad sections, take something people didn't like, change it to something that people did like, and then make it kind of hard and add this back in and try and make it so when you come every year, it's a little bit fresh and different. But I would go out there for literally days and days and days. So what I would do is drive and drive it. And then when I kind of figured it out, then I would go and ride it and say, how does this feel on a bike? And is this fun or not good fun? And I would go out there, I am not kidding you, for weeks and weeks and weeks. And I would maybe see 2 or 3 oil and gas trucks. Once in a while, I would see a motorhead, a guy like I used to be out on a motorcycle or something. Never did I see a bicycle. You cannot go out there almost on any given day of the week now and not see somebody riding. It's so, it's so cool to me. I used to, probably after the first year, I would be out there and all of a sudden I would see a track. I'm like, oh my God, somebody else is riding out here. It's like, it's so cool. Somebody came and did it. And now when I ride out there, there's tracks all the time. Yeah. We've created this gravel scene here that didn't exist. And it makes me respect so much what the guys in Fruita did with the mountain bike scene, right? To take Kokopelli and all that stuff that was nothing and make it, an international mountain bike mecca. And I'm not striving to do that with gravel, but I love that my idea of what could happen out there has happened and people are appreciating it. So that was kind of my genesis for the race. And now I spend my time just trying to make it better and get more people to come here and share it. It's really hard. What hasn't happened in graveling yet is it hasn't been around long enough yet. It's probably getting close to that, to have a definition of what's easy gravel and what's hard gravel, because it kind of depends on where you come from.
Yeah.
And our gravel's really hard. It's tough terrain. The roads can be in bad shape. And I embrace that. It's like, this is not, it's kind of like riding 350 miles in Kansas. It's not for the faint of heart.
Right.
But what it's done is, it used to be that everybody wanted to do my 125 mile race. Now everybody wants to do the 50 mile race because it's a really hard 50 miles.
So what are your distances?
So we do 30, 50, 75, 100, and 125 in the spring. And that's called Cotuit, which is CO, the number 2 UT.
Yep.
And that means Colorado to Utah, because we go across the border, which I thought was a cool thing. And then, in the fall, I do a race called Rexy, and Rexy is the big, badass queen of the dinosaurs. She's the big monster mama, T-Rex. And that's the race that's from Moab to here, which I've modified. Unfortunately, people just I couldn't get it to work. I made some mistakes early. And I think people did it and were like, well, that's way too hard. So this last year I did it 200 miles, but we didn't go to Moab. We just did a big loop, and I don't know what I'll do this year, but it's still really hard. In that race, we do a 50, 100, 200.
Okay.
So just 3 distances, but stretch it out and, get people be able to go out there further. And and the reason I love that race more than anything is there's some stuff over by, you can go through Cisco, which is super cool to see the history of Cisco. But when you get over to Thompson Springs, you get up in the book. I get to take people way up in the Book Cliffs with these just crazy, just unbelievable views. The cover shot they did of me last year in the mountain bike, the local magazine here.
The Rides magazine.
The Rides, yes. Thank you. Was me up there on this giant cliff and this view that I'd love to take people up. And you have to go out there for the race. And, so it's, to me, it's all about sharing what I love with other people. Mm-hmm. So that's how that's happening.
And when is Cotuit?
So Cotuit is May 3rd. Okay. So we shoot for the first weekend in May and the first or second weekend in October, kind of the two great, the nice, first of the nice month in summer and then the last of the good stuff in the fall. Okay. Yeah. And what's the date? Do you have dates for Rexy? October 18th. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And what does it take to register? To register for Cotuit is open now. It's bikereg.com/Cotuit, or our website, which is super easy, desertgravel.com. And then Rexy registration isn't open yet. I open that as soon as we finish Cotuit, kind of as a celebration of Cotuit to get people to come back and do that. And what can people expect for the Cotuit race? Is that the one where you do the festival kind of thing in Fruita? In Fruita, yeah. Okay. It's a party. Yep. Yeah, I want it to be a party and a celebration. I mean, Fruita is such a great city, right? I call it a town. They call it the city. It's such a great place for people to come and hang out. So we do it in the park. It's right downtown. 2 years ago, we started to tie it in with George and Over the Edge with the Fat Tire Fest, which is super cool. So there's a mountain bike thing there. The festival's going on. We've got beer. We've got music. Those trials riders last year. Oh my gosh. Amazing. They were crazy. Yeah. They had the people lay down and jumping over, hopping over, and it's like, that's trust. Yeah, it is trust, right? It is trust, or ignorance. Yeah, either way. Yeah. So we do it in conjunction with them, and it's a Saturday, and it goes all day, and we start in the morning at 7, and the last riders come in at 7 or 8 at night. We just have a big party, and we do great awards, and we give everybody food and beer, and it's a great event. Nice. Yeah. What's the environment like on the trail? What's the attitude like, I guess, on the course, not the trail? Yeah. Is it super competitive? Is it more relaxed and encouraging? Great question. Yeah, it depends on who you are. Probably, yeah. I go back and forth between calling it a race and an event. And it's a really interesting mix. I've toyed with the idea of doing like they do with the Tour of the Moon, of making it just a fun ride. The Moab Grand Fondo does a great job with that, where it's just kind of a ride, and the people that want to go fast. But and I can only say this because I'm one of them. The old guys are the people that want to race. Like the 60 or 70-year-olds are asking, like, you have an age group of 70 plus, right? Yeah. And, the young guys that are faster and in their denim cut-off shorts instead of Lycra, like, yeah, whatever. But the front end of the pack is pretty sharp, and people going really fast. And I love that because I'm a racer. But the people, and I call them the smart people, that stop and take pictures and, get it all on film, and saw the golden eagles and, saw the coyote and that stuff that we all miss, right? The smart people come and have a really good time. And, I love that because and what's incredible to me, even to this day, is I'll go out there once everything starts. I kind of hop in my truck and go out to see what's going on. And I got nervous the first couple of years, like, oh my gosh, we've got 1,000 people here, and what's that going to be like? And, I mean, you get out there after 30 minutes, and people will say to me, I can't believe I started with, because we start them in groups based on how far they're going. But people will be like, I started with 200 or 300 people, and I rode by myself.
Yeah.
For 3 hours. I mean, it is a huge desert.
Yeah.
And it gets strung out and spread out, and everybody's just in their groove, and some people are going fast, and other people are stopping and taking pictures. And so I'm really proud of the vibe that we've created. We have a real women-centric focus because I got started, another podcast story for another time, but I got started in the event management business by creating a charity that gave, because of my daughter, who was a teenager at the time, we kind of focused on young girls' scholarships to Knowles, the National Outdoor Leadership School. So I put on athletic events to raise money to put on scholarships to reconnect kids with the wild. And it always had kind of a girls' focus. And I saw that in gravel, there's all these riders, and there weren't that many women. So I created this whole women's incentive. We called it a Gravel Girl Coupon, where if you sign up for full price, I give you a coupon to bring your girlfriend or mom or daughter, somebody with you at half price. And so we have had the largest that I can find, highest percentage of women riders in probably any cycling event that's not a women specific. We're usually 35 to 40% women in a sport where it's usually 5 or 10% women riding. So it gets this cool women's vibe, and the girls are out there having a good time. So that's a cool vibe. It's a good thing.
So with that, if someone wants to do the race, they don't have a gravel bike, they just have a mountain bike.
Yeah.
Is that?
A lot of people do that.
Okay.
Yeah. And it works pretty well.
Yeah.
Especially the course changes kind of depending on our moisture. Wet years and the cows are all out there chewing up the roads, it gets beat up. There are times when it would be better to be on a mountain bike. It's usually faster to be on a gravel bike, but I want people to just come and
enjoy it.
Time. Yeah. We have an e-bike category, so we can use e-bikes and get out there and check it out.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I just got myself an e-bike.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it.
I'm loving it.
Yeah. I haven't talked to anybody that got one that doesn't wish they did.
Yeah, I know.
It's like, I should have done that 2 years ago.
Well, now I can keep up with Ben.
Yeah.
Well, Morgan, thank you so much for coming and chatting with us. We will certainly link your website to the podcast so that people can go and register if they're interested in it. But thank you. We really do appreciate you sitting down with us.
Yeah, thanks for what you guys do. You sold us a home.
Yes. Which
we appreciate your service and how good you are at that. And, you doing this and doing things like this for the Grand Valley are important. So thanks to you guys too. And keep up the good work, and let's do it again. I'll tell you all kinds of stories.
That sounds
Talk
good.
about Mongolia or running across the Sahara. It was a pretty crazy story.
I was wanting to get to Mongolia, and then we kind of got off. And then I wanted to touch on your run, but we got off on other stuff. Okay. So another time.
Yeah, another time.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you guys.
Well,
Appreciate
thanks.
it. Yeah. Thank you.